Hello, everyone. Good afternoon from Cambodia. Thank you for joining us. We have a large number of participants from across the globe, and we are really excited to be hosting this webinar. My name is Nitin Madan. I live in Cambodia, and I am the SPTF's regional support advisor based out of Cambodia. We have a short time, but a lot of content to cover. So let me start by quickly laying out the broad canvas of what we will be covering today. We know that this ongoing pandemic, the COVID-19 pandemic, has established a new dynamic, one that has impacted the lives and financial stability of low-income and poor households, and also MSMEs. A lot of them are clients that we serve in the microfinance sector or the financial inclusion sector. This new dynamic is largely due to lockdowns and physical distancing rules that we have seen imposed in nearly all countries around the world. The flip side has been that the lockdowns and physical distancing have spurred digital payments. And this is mainly due to the fact that in most countries, there is now a high penetration of mobile phones, e-wallets, as well as agent access points. And this allows for physical distancing, avoidance of long distance travel, and importantly, tides over the lack of a bank account. As a result, digital payment transfers have been resorted to by many countries and institutions to deliver social assistance and financial services in response to COVID-19. Many countries have, in fact, strengthened their digital payment systems as well. Many financial institutions have done the same, and those that had not or were considering this have put digital payment considerations front and center of their strategy. While going digital is the new mantra, it has brought up issues of how inclusive are our digital payment systems. At the financial institution level, inclusiveness of our digital payment systems will really be determined by how we ensure that clients are at the center of the digital payment system we design and implement. This particular webinar that SPTF and MCRIL are hosting today is about exploring how financial institutions can go about creating and implementing a digital payment strategy, but also one that puts clients at the center of the strategy of our work. So I will transfer the mic over to my colleagues at MCRIL in India. I'm joined by Achin Bansal, who's the Senior Vice President of MCRIL, and he will be leading the webinar. Achin, over to you. Please do introduce yourself a bit more and then proceed, and also please do introduce your team members. Achin, your mic.
Hi, Nitin. Yeah, thanks for the introduction, Nitin. Firstly, I can welcome to all the participants. I can see that we have close to 250 attendees on this call. So a very good morning to those logging in from Africa and Central Asia, and also afternoon to those logging in from Southeast Asia and Southeast Asia, and a really very early morning to those logging in from across the Atlantic. Our today's session, as Nitin detailed, is meant to be a training activity focused on enabling digital payments for MFIs. As Nitin gave us a picture that the COVID-19 pandemic has really brought this issue to the front and center of how MFIs reach out and enable payments and connect with their customers. So today's session is meant to guide you through a journey of how MFIs can create and implement a digital payment strategy. From MCRIL, I am Achin Bansal. I head the digital finance practice. I am joined by my colleague Sana Zehra. She is our Indonesia country manager and also is an expert in matters of client protection. We will be delivering today's session, and Nitin will also act as one of the hosts from SPTF side. So we have a lot of content to go through, so we'll jump right into the presentation. Just a few ground rules. All the participants, as you would realize, have been muted upon joining. We will have a question and answer session at the end. So you can put in your questions in the chat box, which you can see at the bottom, or you can put it in the Q&A. We will take a few questions at the end. If somebody wants to speak again in the question answer session, you can raise your hand and the moderator will unmute you and you can put your question directly to us. So we request you to bear with us for the question answer session till the end of the training activity. There will also be a couple of opinion poll based activities which we will conduct, which we will guide you through as the training commences. So what are we looking at today? The training, the digital payments training is meant to look at the considerations that are there for MFIs who are implementing digital payments. As I said, it is meant to, the first part of the training is meant to detail out an approach and a framework. The second part of the session focuses mainly on operationalizing it by developing a decision matrix for implementing digital payments and then operationalizing it on the ground. So these are the two session plans. I just covered them briefly. Session 1 is on digital payment strategy and the imperatives behind it. And session 2 is meant to focus on operationalizing digital payments. So I'll jump right into session 1, which focuses on the strategy bits of how to implement digital payments. Now, what do we mean by digital payments? Digital payments here means implementing a implementing payments through a digital transaction platform, which enables customers to use an electronic interface. This electronic interface can be a device, can be a phone, can be the web through a laptop or a computer, and it enables the payer and the payee to make or receive payments electronically. These electronic payments are in a stored value format. The stored value format is enabled by a license or a permission given by a central bank of the country for a particular operator to operate this electronic instrument, right? To make this simpler, the two key factors which define digital payment are the nature of the payment instrument, which means is it digital, is it paper-based, and how the instructions are carried for this payment instrument. The second factor is the payer-payee interface. So let me take an example. Checks would not be digital, or demand drafts or demand notes would not be digital. Currency obviously is not digital because all these involve paper. Whereas mobile money, internet banking, RTGS instruments, bulk payments through central bank modes, all of these fall under digital means, wherein the payment instrument is end-to-end digital. And also in these modes, if you look at it, the payer-payee interface is through an electronic medium. It can be through a transaction platform, it can be through your mobile phone, it can be through a web-based platform. So these two things are key to understanding what do we mean or how do we define digital payments. Now, the ecosystem of digital payments is quite complex. There are regulations, there is institutional capability. All of you as part of MFIs, banks or leasing companies, financial institutions have your own systems, employee capability, skills, training level, etc., which you have to consider while opting for a digital payment mechanism for your customers. There is the enabling infrastructure, which differs from country to country. And geography to geography or province to province within countries. So agent networks may be strong in a particular area. In other areas, it may not be similar, maybe the scenario for countries. And then we can also see the same in penetration and reach of the web or mobile connectivity. It may not be available in certain provinces. It may be available in the semi-urban and urban areas. And lastly, there is the aspect of client suitability. While you factor in all of these, what suits your client? What is the level of digital literacy that the client has? What level of access they have? So as an MFI, to enable disbursements and repayments, you have to figure out these gamut of considerations in the ecosystem of your country or your payment system. So we will, through this training, try to devise a strategy and help you devise a strategy of how to negotiate these various factors. Now we have a short poll to conduct. So in about 30 seconds, I will flash a poll. All the attendees can answer the poll, and then we will display the results before we jump into the strategy part. So you would see the poll on your screen about now. I hope everybody has access to the poll. You can use your voting buttons to pick options. The question that we are asking here is, what is the first step you consider while implementing digital payments for your customers? Do you look at what are the available solutions in the market? What is the cost of that solution? Do you compare with what competition is doing? Do you look at your customers' needs? Do you check your IT readiness or IT capabilities or staff training, those aspects? Or you look at your field or staff capabilities. There is the IT capability and there is your field force or the staff which will go out and interact with the customers, right? So we want you to answer what do you consider as your first point of discussion when you look at deploying digital payments. So I can see 100 plus people have voted. We will keep this up for another minute or so while you guys are responding, and then we will jump into the rest of the session. While everybody is voting, I would just like to clarify this training will be provided on the SPTF website. So no need to record it. There will be a recording and the presentation will also be available for access by everybody. It will be up on the SPTF website in a couple of days, and we will share the link with all those who have participated today. So yeah, another 20 seconds and then we'll end the poll. Okay, just the last 5 seconds. Those who have not made up their mind can quickly vote. Yeah, I'll end the poll now. And I will just now share the results with the audience. Now you can see the results in front of you. Analyze customer needs has come up as the most significant factor. But out of the 200 plus people that responded, if you look, the others have also, as their first consideration, have looked at various other things like the cost of digital payment solutions or availability and the IT readiness, etc., etc. Right? So now we will look at how does this square off with developing a digital strategy. Now, an approach to developing the digital strategies, typically what organizations do is they look at their ecosystem, they look at the players available, they look at what solutions are available and apply various considerations as we saw in the opinion poll of ease of access, ease of implementation, cost, etc., and define which digital payment mechanism or which digital service are they going to provide to their customers. What we are advocating over here is that you need to do something different, wherein the approach has to be really customer centric. You need to build from the outward inwards out rather than looking at your environment, solution, IT capabilities, etc. The first point of reference should be your customers. How do we go about that? Now, this is a paradigm to look at the customer-centric digital payment strategy. As you can see, the customer is right at the center over here, and other factors like which digital solution or cost come far later at step number 4 or step number 5, right? The customer centricity has to be the point where you need to start off planning for your digital payment strategy. While looking at the customer, you need to look at aspects of access, digital literacy, cost to customer, ease of use, and adaptability. And in the other factors that we have looked at for devising the strategy, first is the institutional capacity. What is the institutional capacity of the financial institution, namely an MFI or a leasing company or a bank? What is the readiness and the preparedness and the level of development of the IT systems, because that will be essential for reconciliation, integration with a payment provider. What are the prevailing regulations? Various countries have various regulations around permitting disbursements, repayments. There are checks and balances. So obviously you need to be careful of that. Fourth is then you look at the solutions available. So since you have defined your customer, you have looked at all inwards aspect of your institutional capability, of your IT readiness and the prevailing regulations, then you look in your ecosystem. That is, then you start looking outwards and consider the digital solutions or the payment solutions and their design and features that are available in the market that you are operating. Along with the features and design, you also look at the cost of the solution that you are considering and the time to market, right? So we will delve into this a little bit more. Now, as I pointed out, the first factor that you need to look at is your customer needs. Define or describe your customer, who you are designing the digital payments strategy for. As we have pointed out over here, there are various lenses or various considerations to look at your customer. There it may be the location, because often the location governs access of the customer, access in terms of agent networks, ATMs, bank branches, etc., etc. The second factor to look at is technology, access to technology, whether the customer has a feature phone, has a smartphone, has internet connectivity, or has a basic phone. Is the phone used by the customer themselves? Say it's a household and your customer is the lady of the house. Does she have a phone of her own, or she's using maybe her husband's phone or her son's or her brother's phone? So what is the access to this technology platform? What is the level of digital literacy? Are they comfortable with apps? Are they comfortable with numbers? Are they comfortable with the USSD interface? What kind of training or upskilling will be required for them to use a digital payment technology? What is the ease of use? Do you see customers initiating a lot of transactions themselves, like downloading apps and using maybe apps to do bill payments or to do transfers? Or do you see them using a lot of assistance? Assistance may be in the form of agents, wherein they may be walking up to a bank agent or a mobile money agent and asking and basically handing over their phone to the agent and asking them to conduct a transaction, be it still in a digital format, right? Then there is the cost to customer, obviously very important. If the cost to customer in terms of distance to travel or a transaction fee or any of those is very high, it will be a significant hindrance for the customer to adopt a digital payment mechanism. And lastly is adaptability. Uh, a major decision in going for digital payments is the behavioral change or the adaptability of the customers. Often customers have this fear, or by rote behavior, they are reluctant to move to a digital payments instrument. Now, to look at that, you really need to see whether your customer base is a digital apps user or it is using digital technology apps, Facebook, YouTube, etc., payment wallets very sparsely, because that will define and dictate how you need to reach out to the customer, how you need to handhold him or her through the process of rolling out your digital payment strategy. You may very well deploy a digital payments platform and partner with somebody, but if there is not sufficient effort made to handhold your customer, who may be a sparse user of payment apps, or who may not use app at all, or who may have a not have a smartphone, may have a feature phone, has no access to apps. So in that case, the adaptability and the effort that the MFI or the concerned financial institution has to make for the customer to make the journey from doing paper-based or cash-based transactions to digital transactions increases many-fold. Otherwise, the adaptability will not come naturally. The financial institution or the MFI will deploy a digital payment instrument, but the customers, he or she will continue to use either the physical paper-based or cash-based channels, or as I said, they will depend on agents or third parties to basically conduct the transaction for themselves and not really truly go digital in a real sense. So these are the factors that you need to consider while you look at your customer base. Now, as you would understand, this would lead to various segments of your customers. Some would be SMEs, small and medium enterprises. Some would be household women. Some would be in the rural area. Some would be in the semi-urban area. Some would be farmers. Some would be running small poultry or handicraft businesses. So there will be various customer segments that will emerge along according to the customer profile, according to what product you're offering them, according to geography, reach, penetration, access, etc., as we detailed in the previous slide. So once you have developed these customer segments, then you need to look at each of the elements to deploy in terms of a digital payment mechanism. So what this means is that for your customer base, it may not be necessary that one particular digital payment mechanism will address all of your customers, because as I'll just go back to my previous slide, because customers have we have painted out 6 considerations over here. This will divide your customer base into 2, 3, 4, 5 different segments. Now, imagining that one payment technology or one digital payment solution will address all of these is very, very difficult. So if you truly want to go digital, if you truly want to ensure that from customer segment A to B, C, E, F, G, or Z, whatever be the case for your institution, you need to look at what is the considerations and how you have divided the customer segment, and then position your digital payments technology accordingly. It may be a combination of 1, 2 technologies. It may be the same technology provider offering, say, a smartphone-based solution as well as a USSD-based solution. It may be a process which you co-develop with the payment provider, wherein it is a smartphone or a USSD-based solution, but there is, say, a 6-month cycle in which you and the field force of the payment provider handhold the customer through these processes, right? So you will have to evolve and develop the payments product suited to the various consumer segments or customer segments which your financial institution is catering to. So the further considerations, as we discussed earlier as well, are laid out over here. Institutional capacity, readiness of IT systems, regulations, etc. We have discussed this, so I will not jump into detailing this more. This slide, I hope, is self-explanatory. So what does it leave us in terms of a digital payments framework? As I mentioned, the digital payments framework starts with defining your various customer segments, their needs, how do they interact with the market, how do they interact with technology, what access do they have, and you go through the process of applying all the parameters that we discussed and end with a solution that is addressing the customer needs and segmentation that you had built up right at the start. So at the end, the segments and their needs that you had defined should be met or should be ticked off by the solution that you are deploying. Otherwise, you may have a fabulous solution. It may be very efficient. It may offer the best and quickest reconciliation. It would be very low cost, but your customer base will just not adopt it, right? Because we have not looked at it from a customer lens. What do they need? What are their requirements? And what are their constraints? So this is where we end up defining the digital payments framework. Now there are few imperatives also which you need to look at while defining your strategy. The 4 imperatives are laid out over here: customer protection, risk, orienting and training your teams, and what incentives can you provide to the customers for encouraging adoption. I will quickly go through each of these. Customer protection, most of you from the MFI sector and the financial institutions that are participating here are very well aware of this. Your solutions need to be oriented in a manner wherein they safeguard the customer's interest, and there is a consideration made towards customer protection. So there should not be any overcharging, mis-selling. There should be care taken that the third parties that you are engaging with do not do any fraudulent transactions with the customers, which will enable you to deploy a solution which has the heart of, at its heart, customer protection. So you need to be careful while selecting and while monitoring the deployment of these solutions that these aspects are taken care of. Secondly, risk management. Obviously, with any new process or any solution, there are inherent risks. So organizations need to have a pre-prepared risk management framework. There should be a proper governance of that framework, where right from the senior management to the field level, regional management, branch and field officers, responsibilities are divided. And for each risk, each type of risk, each situation that may emerge, there are responsibilities and roles assigned for all of the financial institution staff, right? It should also be, there's also an importance over here of the institution taking a proactive approach. You would need to do, say you tie up with a wallet provider, or you tie up with a bank for using their agency banking function. It would be very helpful if there are surprise checks or mystery shopping exercises conducted at such agent outlets or agency banking or mobile money agents outlet. The institution in consideration, let's assume it's a MFI, should not wait for certain risks to present themselves in real time. There has to be a proactive approach to go and check of what operations are being done on a regular basis, so that the risks are addressed before it results in some serious loss of reputation or money to the institution. Thirdly, staff training, very, very critical. We talked about looking at it from the customer lens. The second most important thing over here is your staff. While you have developed a solution which has the customer's interest at its heart and is catering to their needs, if your staff is not well acquainted and conversant and has comfort in using your chosen payment solution, there it will not be successful. Because for all of your customers, your staff is the first point of contact and their first grievance redressal officer, their first point of registering any complaint or seeking any help. So your staff has to be completely and well trained in the use of these digital payment instruments. Their concerns or issues or complaints in operating the digital payment instrument should be captured, and there should be a mechanism to capture it quickly and addressed, because your field force is the single point of contact that will make and drive the adoption of a digital payment process successful, right? So sufficient effort and in-depth activity needs to be put in training your staff, and they should be very, very conversant with all the intricacies, nitty-gritties and mechanisms of operating the chosen digital payment solution. Lastly, customer incentives. There are various means. By customer incentives, first let me clarify, it's not only money incentives that you may give some cashbacks or some top-ups or those things. There can be other incentives also in the form of time saved, cost saved, in the form of offering differential rates for going digital, in the form of offering other add-on products, because you will have a much richer data of the customers who are going digital. So there needs to be an effort made by the organization to have some incentives built into the process. Because as I mentioned, by rote habit, many customers are accustomed to transacting and using paper-based mechanism, mainly cash. There needs to be an effort done to change this behavior, and an explicit incentive Again, not necessarily monetary. There are several non-monetary incentives that can be provided, which need to be deployed to change the behavior of the customer and make them adaptable to an instrument or a digital payment form, which maybe they may be trying for the very first time, right? So these are the four imperatives along with the digital strategy framework that any organization needs to consider while building their digital payments strategy. That ends our first session. We will take a question in between before we go into session 2, which takes us from the strategy bit to actually operationalizing this on the ground. We have talked about strategy. We have talked about how do you need to place the customer at the right center of your strategy activity and build from inward out. And we have also talked about the 4 imperatives that are important, that you need to consider along with your strategy. Now, in the second part of the training, we will look at operationalizing or implementing this in a real-time environment on the field. But before we move to that, this is the second question that we need to that we desire to have your views about. So, like previously, I will just enable the question in 10 seconds. Yeah, now I believe everybody would have access to it. I can see there are 300 plus people logged into this call right now. So the question that we are asking is, what according to you is the major constraint in adopting digital payments? Is it an access to smartphone? Is it an access to any phone? The customer may not have their own phone at all, or they may be using a phone of somebody else in the household. Is it availability of agent outlets? It may be a bank agent, mobile money agent, or any other kind of agent. Lack of digital literacy, fear of customers. As I said, many of them have a fear of risk inherent in digital payments. They may also perceive additional costs in going digital, or it may be something else. So please go ahead and do give your opinion. We will keep this up for about 2.5 minutes. We are almost at the 1 minute point. And for the next part of the presentation of the training, I would request my colleague Sana to take over from here once we end the polling. While you are responding to the poll, I would just like to add, please go ahead and keep sending us your questions. You can send us your questions in the Q&A box at the bottom of your screen or in the chat box. We will collate them and answer them. We will answer a few of them as I said, at the end of this training session. We have a time allotted for Q&A. We will definitely take them up then. So we will give this about another 40 or so seconds. I see that about 70 odd people have still not voted. So please go ahead and pick the option that you feel is the major constraint in your customer base adopting digital payments. Last 15 seconds, please go ahead and make your picks. Last 5 seconds, we'll just end the poll very quickly. Okay, we'll just end it now. And in about 20 seconds, we'll share the results with you. They should be visible to all the audience in about a minute. Yeah, I believe it's visible now. So as we can see, lack of digital literacy has come out as the major concern that all the 300 odd participants feel impedes or constrains customers from adopting digital payments. The second most important constraint we see over here is the customer's fear of or the risks that the customer perceive in adopting digital payments. Also, if I may combine the top two, access to a smartphone or any phone, about 20% of you have also pointed out that as a major constraint. So great. The second part of the session precisely looks at this aspect of how can you build and deploy a solution which addresses lack of digital literacy or customer fear, and also how can you get around uh, uh, the lack of access or availability of a smartphone, right? So we will jump into the second part of the session in just a second. Sana, I see you're on, so please take it ahead.
Thank you, Achin, for the introduction, and thank you, respondents, for participating in this very interesting session. The next session, as Achin mentioned, will focus on two things primarily. One is working on a digital, working on a decision matrix for enabling digital payments. So we have talked about what we need to look at and what are the imperatives, what are the different risks that we need to look at. But now we are, these are just things that are there up there. Now we will look at how to bring them together and develop an effective digital payment strategy. After that, we will also conduct a process walkthrough with different types of customer profiles to let you understand how can you operationalize these different payment methods with these various types of clients. So moving on, for the decision matrix, we have four main elements. Like for any strategy, the first step is defining. What are we trying to do? Where are we trying to reach? So we have to ask yourselves, what do we want to do? Where do we want to go? The next thing is taking stock of what we have, assessing. What do I have? What do I need? What more do I need to get where I want to go that I've already defined? The next step in this is building. Now you have assessed what you already have to get to what you have defined. Now you build on your capabilities. Now you add on. What resources should you deploy? What all do you need to add on? Once you have built the systems, once you have built your capability, then you go on to implement and decide how do you make it happen? How do you make it a success? Moving on, the first thing that we look for while defining, and what we have been continuously talking about in the previous slides also, is customer. It has to be, the focus of this approach has to be the customer rather than the approach that we commonly take where a solution is decided and sort of deployed in the company and the customers have to adopt to it. What we are saying now is that we have to understand our customers. We have to know what they need and then build up the channel, what the product, digital payment product from there up. So first of all, we need to define what sort of accessibility are we looking at? Do we want the digital payment solutions to be accessible to the majority of our client base or to a particular segment that lives in, say, a particular geography, etc.? And we are also talking about a very important aspect, which is customer segmentation. What we mean here by customer segmentation is that we need to see what payment modes support our different types of customers. Usually institutions select one payment method and different types of clients use the same payment method. Now an institution might be catering to different types of clients. They might be in rural areas, they might be SME owners, etc. So what we also propose that MFIs look at is what can it offer a mix of different payment methods for its to its clients so that they can all access it. It's not that just one group of customers is able to access the particular payment channel that it is offering. The next is, it's one of the most important aspects as well that the institution needs to define for itself, given the situation with the virus and other constraints that the institutions are facing currently. That is just to decide what what are the costs that they have and would be able to deploy to implement a payment solution. Then for an institution, it's also necessary to identify how much time will it take for the product to be launched, and how much time will it take for it to integrate the backends of different payment systems with its own systems. And I remember one of the participants even mentioning during the chat, and we also think it's very important for the institutions to decide whether they see the deployment of a payment solution as a short-term fix given the current scenario, or whether they think of it as a long-term strategy, because in both these cases, the strategy of the institution for implementing a digital payment system would be very different. For example, if you wanted it as a quick fix, because right now there are restrictions, etc., so you will go to the most convenient, fastest to implement, maybe even if it's slightly higher in the cost. Whereas if you're looking at a long-term strategy, you will focus more on building capabilities of your staff, educating your clients, and looking at enabling environments so that a lot of clients, like a lot of you have pointed out, that there is a lack of digital literacy. So a lot of us would also have to focus and engage resources in building digital literacy capabilities of our clients if we look at this as a long-term strategy. Moving on, the next aspect that we look at is assessing. So we need to assess both the internal as well as external factors. I think Achin probably has dropped, facing some internet connection issues. So I'll share my screen now. Hi, Achin.
Sorry.
Yeah, sorry. There was some issue. I'll just reshare the present. Yeah, I'm just resharing.
Great, yeah.
Yeah, please go ahead, Sana.
Thanks, Achin. So the next step after defining, as we have already seen in the previous slides, is assessing both our internal capabilities as well as our external enabling environment. For example, for our internal assessments, we need to look at whether the institution has the capable resources, the key persons, are they capable of implementing digital payment solutions, because there could be some amount of complexity involved in that. And also determining whether and to what extent do you need to modify your MIS systems, and also evaluating whether the advantages of implementing a digital payment system, a particular digital payment system, outweighs the costs that you would incur in implementing the system. And lastly, that another important thing that an institution needs to think about is whether it fits with the larger goal, the mission of the institution, where it wants to go, what it wants for its clients. And the next, looking at the external factors that would also primarily affect the uptake of the digital payment products, is their access to different payment modes. Is there an agent network nearby? Do they have access to ATMs? Do they have access to branches, etc.? And also the quality of infrastructure. Do they have internet connection? What level of what is the level of the quality of the connection they have? And also you look at whether they have access to the internet, web browser, computer systems in the village, etc. The next thing, once we have defined and assessed, is building upon what we already have to get to where we want to go. Implementing a digital payment system cannot be implemented by a particular team, by a particular key person, but it requires the efforts of all the teams together to make it successful. It requires the efforts of and coordination between the operations team, the MIS team, the finance team, the HR and training team, the customer care team, to come together and develop a strategy, because all these different different parts of the company play an important role in making this payment a success for its implementation. Next is creating a competency matrix, which means mapping the skills of the key persons with what is required to be done, and delegating tasks. It might also require institutions to become creative with the job roles of their employees and give them additional responsibilities to look at different aspects. And the next one is, of course, building the technical capabilities, which is done through aligning the backend system, which allows quick reconciliation and accurate data and accurate MIS updates for the institution as well as the service provider. After this, the success also depends, as Achin mentioned in one of the previous slides, on the employees. If your employee is not convinced of the product, then he or she will find it very difficult to convince the client to also use those systems. So it is very important to first of all convince your staff to use the particular, to be sure and to be confident about the particular payment system that you're proposing. And so, like all solutions that are to be deployed, it is important to pilot, do a quick pilot with a representative sample and identify and fix the gaps. And lastly, while preparing for implementation, the institution should also think of an effective communication strategy for the different stakeholders that can help the institution make this a success. Now, once we have looked at all of these things, once we have built our systems and strategies, communication strategies, etc., we now move to implementing the system that we have created. So the first step that we would take is orienting the clients on the various payment methods that would be available to them. And also, we have seen, research shows us that incentivizing, whether monetary or non-monetary, enables a change in, it affects a change in behavior of users. So incentives could be a very important way to increase uptake of digital payment products. Next, it's very important to internalize the importance of this digital strategy at the institutional level. So how do you do it? You incorporate it in your business strategy. How do you ensure that it's implemented? Make it a part of the KPIs of the management. How do you ensure it's also implemented by the field staff? Make it a part of their incentives. This goes a long way in ensuring success of uptake of digital products. Next is, there can never be enough communication. A lot of you also pointed out that the clients are scared about the risks that come along with digital payments, and it is understandable. So what is the solution for this? Communication, regular update, regular retraining of the clients, customers, staff on the product, making them comfortable with using the product, and eventually getting them comfortable using the product. While we have looked at all these 4 aspects, if we had to visualize this to develop a strategy, what we are trying to do is now visualize how do we get all of these 4 elements together. So we can make a matrix where we map these 4 aspects in the columns and look at the various options in the rows. And there are various ways that institutions can look at this matrix. They can try to score the various options. They can try to identify some key processes which will be common for all the options, etc. So this is a good way to develop a digital payment strategy for the institution. And one of the things that we also look at while we are. So in the next session, we will talk about process walkthrough with different profiles of clients. And I would like to invite Achin to take this forward.
Thanks, Sana. So as we said right at the start, session 2 will talk about operationalizing. So we have talked about strategy. Sana has talked about how to translate your strategy into an implementation matrix. And now we will actually demonstrate how you can build a process wherein you can operationalize digital disbursements and collections for your customers. So as we talked about in the first part of the session, your customer has to be at the center of your strategy. Now, while looking at your customer, there will be various considerations which we previously discussed about access, digital literacy, location, geography, availability of technology, etc., etc. Using these, as you can see on the current slide, you can develop customer personas, right? You have already used the decision matrix to arrive at a conclusion of what you're trying to achieve, what changes are required. Now marry this with your customer segmentation and you can build some personas of what type of or what segments of customers does a particular financial institution have. As a sample, we have taken 3 personas here. But let me also explain what do I mean by personas. Personas are, we have tried to group together similar type of customers in a as they exhibit their behavior, this similar type of customer in one particular persona. This persona may be created by the customer's own behavior or by factors external to the customer which influence their behavior. For access to a feature phone, access to a smartphone is an external phenomenon which influences the customer's behavior. The availability of mobile network is an external phenomenon which influences the customer's behavior and informs how do we build this persona. So just to get back to it, we have taken as a sample 3 personas over here. Persona 1 may be a type of customers who is mostly urban, age probably is less than 40. She has a smartphone and can do self-initiated digital transactions. That means she or she has an access to the phone and uses apps and has mobile payments, does mobile payments regularly and can do it without any assistance. Persona 2 is where the concerned customer requires assistance. She is comfortable in using a phone. It may be a smartphone or in most cases maybe a feature phone, but the customer is not very, he or she may be using the smartphone also to watch say YouTube videos or chat on Viber or Telegram or WhatsApp and even use apps like Facebook or TikTok, but they are still not comfortable in doing financial transactions on that same phone. And in another scenario, it may not be a smartphone at all, it may be a feature phone. So that is persona 2, wherein the customers requires assistance. And persona 3 is where it is a feature phone or a basic phone and there is extensive handholding and assistance that is required by the customer. In this case, it may also be that the phone is not owned by the customer herself. It is a phone which is in the household. It is shared among the households and it is not owned by the MFIs or the financial institutions customer. Now, since in our opinion poll, many of you had pointed out that the lack of digital literacy or the fear of usage are the most significant impediments or constraints in adopting digital technology. Let me jump to, I've already detailed these 3 personas. Let me go to persona 3 first. And because that seems to be the customer base or the customer segment of persona type, which financial institutions find most difficult to address. So we'll get back to persona 1 and 2 also. Now let's see persona 3. Persona 3 is a kind of customer where she requires extensive digital assistance, has some fear or fears risks that are associated with digital technology, does not use mobile payments or web-based payments very frequently there is a high likelihood that this kind of customer is in a rural location or maybe in a semi-urban location. As I said, the device, maybe a mobile phone or anything, is not owned by the customer themselves. It's a shared instrument. It's a shared possession which is used by multiple members or more than one member of the household. And the user in this case may be involved in some small business activity. Often it can be also farming related. So this persona we have only created as a dummy to demonstrate how what we have talked about in strategy, in building a matrix, and how to actually operationalizing it. But since a lot of you had pointed out that the risk or the fear or the lack of digital literacy is a major impediment, we think this kind of a persona fits into that description. So we are taking this up first. As financial institutions, as MFIs, you will have to look at your customer base and define your customer segments in personas that will mirror your products and customers that you are catering to. These are just dummy examples. So yeah, how do we now cater to this? Now we've talked about putting the customer at the center and developing a matrix. So as I said, putting the customer at the center means developing these kind of segmentation mechanisms where you clearly understand what type of customer base you have. It may be many personas and we are looking at one. So this is a persona type which we just defined. What do you need to look at while developing the process? The first step would be integration. You would obviously need to go and integrate with financial service providers. Financial service providers can be of many types. They can be payment providers, they can be information providers, they can be lead generators. There are several companies which I have come across in the recent past who generate customer leads for facilitating loans through maybe a WhatsApp or a Telegram or Facebook. So those are also digital providers. There may be others if you are using a device-based technology, a POS-based point of sale, or a POS-based technology, or a card-based technology. So you would need to interact with those kind of financial service providers or FSPs. So MFIs need to take care while devising this process that it is intuitive. By intuitive, I mean it is easily understood to the user. Since, please go back to the persona type. This is a user that has an inherent fear and has low digital literacy. So we need to be very, very careful that the technology, the product, and the instrument that we are using to reach out to the customer is very intuitive in its design, easy to understand, not cluttered, does not have a lot of text, is not overloaded with information. And in the integration process, often we look at integration being only a technical process. Yes, there is a technical process involved wherein the MFIs or the financial institutions systems need to talk to the third parties, the digital payments provider solution. But you also need to integrate your processes in which there has to be hand-holding of the customers for a significant period. Let me give you an example. I have come across with one digital payment provider wherein their field staff as well as the loan officer of the MFI, when they onboard a particular group of ladies for say availing loan, they onboard them jointly. So the MFI's field officer or loan officer as well as the agent or the field officer of the digital payment provider together visit the group of the MFI loan borrowers. They visit them, they teach them about the technology, about they answer their questions and onboard them. And then they continue, and when they repay their loans, they continue this process of going together to the groups and to the ladies in the groups and the customers in the groups for a 3 to 6 months period. That is, in this integration process, they are also integrating their processes. They are taking this customer, which, as you had also pointed out, is a significant area, and as we have defined our process, this is a customer which is inherently wary of digital technology or has low digital literacy. So there is this hand-holding process which happens in the integration where the MFI co-develops this process. And there is a defined period in which the customer slowly in a step-by-step manner migrates to doing digital payments. After the 3 months period, let's assume it's a 3 months period or a 6 months period. If it's a 3 months period, after the 3 months period, then finally both the loan officer and the digital payments provider officer goes and tells them this is your nearest point of access. It may be an agent location, it may be an ATM, it may be a POS location, etc., and encourages the customers to walk up to that particular location, right? So that is what we mean by integration over here. Don't look at it only as technology. It means integration of technology plus processes to cater to a customer base which may have low digital literacy or maybe wary of using digital technology. Next is disbursements. So MFI has released the disbursements to the loan officers. Again, as I said, since we have co-developed a hand-holding process, the disbursement is also done in an assisted mechanism. The loan officer and in some cases the staff of the digital payments provider may accompany, since the disbursement process is the first process that the customer interacts with for the MFI. So again, there is a hand-holding period, and very important over here is, since it's the first interaction of the digital technology along with the staff of the digital payment provider, it is very important for the MFI staff to be very well trained and completely conversant to answer all the queries that their customers may raise, because the customers have been interacting with their loan officer of the MFI or the field officer of the MFI for a considerable period. They are comfortable with him or her, they know him, and they will put their questions to the staff of the MFI. It can be the field staff or a branch staff. So they need to be very well aware that this first interaction of the customer with the technology needs to pass off in a seamless manner, wherein they are aware of the technology and are able to answer the questions fully and in a manner in which the customers are convinced and feel at ease of how to use this technology. The next step is repayment. As I mentioned above, it needs to be a co-developed process where there is hand-holding through a period, but the MFI needs to manage its costs, and the main premise whereby the MFI opts for digital technology is cost saving of time, lesser number of visits. So there needs to be a transition mechanism wherein you have introduced the customer, onboarded them, done this joint activity for disbursements, and then slowly move them up the curve to phase out the paper-based mechanism and lower the number of physical visits and increase more and more digital repayments, digital usage of the technology platform that has been deployed, right? And lastly is the reconciliation mechanism. Since the process that we detailed has a combination of digital plus field-based efforts for some period, and then it migrates to being end-to-end digital, the reconciliation needs to be taken care of very carefully. It has to be done on a daily basis, and MFI needs to have a report from its partner digital provider as well as from its field force, so that there is no gap in what has been happening at the field level as well as what has been reported by the partner providing the digital technology, right? So this is a mechanism wherein we have put the customer at the center, wherein we have defined a particular persona, we have tried to look at what we want to achieve, and thereby using the metrics which Sana detailed just before me, looked at going in a step-by-step manner to actually operationalizing a digital payments process for the customer. We will quickly also cover two more personas. So Sana, you want to take up persona 2?
Sure, thanks Sachin. So the second persona is someone who is slightly more sophisticated than the persona 3 that Achin just discussed. This is the most common type of persona that most of us come across, and this customer can do assisted digital transactions, is most likely to be living in a semi-urban or rural location, limited digital literacy, has a feature phone or a basic phone, or access to some basic network like agent network. and would be an individual or having a small business. Now, for integration, in such cases, usually the service providers are well acquainted with the MFI's operations and have specialized APIs, etc., to integrate. And to make it a success, it is also important that the agent is trained on the practices and the product of the institution, so that in such cases, what happens is, in the previous case, Persona 3, we saw that the field staff would usually end up being the main face of the institution. For Persona 2, the agents at times end up becoming the main face of the institution for the clients. So it is important that the agent is well aware of the policies and the processes and products of the institution to make this happen. Next, once the disbursement happens, the agent was already aware of the process, has already been trained before being onboarded as an agent for this particular financial service provider. The client would visit the agent location with identity documents. We have seen the various models that could be deployed for this. It could also be PIN-based identification or biometric identification methods. And to make it effective, the staff and the agent should be well aware of the process, and the technology, of course, should be working so that the customer has quick access to the funds. Just to add a point here, the main challenge for this persona is that they end up relying a lot on the agent. So there is very little effort from the say end of both the agent, the field staff, and the client for increasing the digital literacy of the client. So in MCRA's internal studies, we have seen, especially in Myanmar and Cambodia, that 90% of the users either do not end up downloading the third-party app to do these transactions, or they rely on the agent to do the transaction for them, because they're just like they would just hand over their phone to the agent saying it's quicker, it's easier, it's faster if they did it for them. So one major impediment for this persona is that they remain in this limbo where they are neither completely digitally capable, and to move on to persona 1 that we'll see, neither are they completely knowledgeless where they are persona 3. So moving on for the next step, which is the repayment. In this case also, the client would visit the agent location and make the payments. Could be through QR codes, which have increased uptake in many areas of the world, and could be through a card, could be through back-end accounts that are linked with the biometric of the client. And to make this happen, the MFI should ensure that the agent network it selects is one that is present and easily accessible to its client base. Lastly, the MIS of the institution should all be able to easily be integrated with the payment service provider. And like I mentioned earlier, since most of these payment service providers have experience of working with the MFIs, it is a quick process, and they should be able to give end of day reconciled statements and update on funds, whether a particular client has withdrawn the disbursement funds, whether the payment has been made, because this information will then be necessary for the MFI to make any follow-ups if required with the client. Achin, would you like to talk about persona 1 now?
Sure, Sana. So thanks, Sana. Persona 1 is the most digitally aware customer. This customer can do digital transactions, is likely to be in a semi-urban or urban location, has a smartphone. She has a smartphone which probably he or she uses to access various apps, various chat apps and Facebook, etc. And it may be also that we have considered this persona to also operate some kind of a smaller medium enterprise. Now, for this advanced set of customer, the integration has to be really online and real time. I'm talking about the IT integration. So the digital financial service providers integration is done through an API. It's a real time integration wherein the moment a transaction is done by the customer, the financial institution, in this case the MFI, is made aware of it through the API by the concerned financial service provider. For the disbursement portion, although this user is very conversant with digital technology, the MFI needs to take care that while disbursing, the terms of the loan or the terms of the product that are being offered are very, very clearly displayed, are very clearly understood, and there is a consent taken of the customer, because it's a smartphone. You don't want to be too cluttered, but at the same time, the customer needs to be aware about what kind of products they are getting into, what are the terms and conditions. So the disbursement and the display of terms and conditions at this first point of initiation of a loan product need to be very clearly structured, very lucidly structured, and very clearly visible, so that the customer is aware about what are the terms and conditions, and also what are the mechanisms for any grievance that the customer may have. So it needs to be taken care, whether it is done through a phone-based mechanism or it is done through a physical agent-based mechanism, that these are well understood. In terms of repayment, as this customer is very digitally aware, the repayment may be through USSD, through an app, through internet or web-based banking. It can be multiple means. Again, it goes back to our point of having the integration done, the technical integration done very tightly, so that this multi-modal or multiple modes of repayment are available, because this is a very digitally aware customer. So these modes need to be made available. These need to be made, the customer needs to be made aware of the presence of these modes, because you need to the aim is to maximize usage of digital by this customer segment. And lastly, since the API integration has already been handled in the first part, the reconciliation would also be a real-time online kind of scenario, wherein it is done not at the end of the day or after 1 hour or 2 hours, but on a real-time basis. A very important point over here in Persona 1 is, even though the customer is very digitally aware and digitally literate and has a smartphone, uses the smartphone extensively, often we end up converting these customers, or we do not pay sufficient attention that these customers use the digital technology to its full extent. They still end up using third-party agents or bank provided agents to do their repayments and disbursements. This actually impacts the rollout very significantly, because if the customer uses the full heft of the digital technology, it can give you very rich data about the customer, her usage, her payment patterns, location, etc., etc. But if even a digitally literate customer uses a semi-digital mechanism or an assisted digital mechanism, which Sana was explaining in Persona 2, we are actually downscaling the customer from her or his full potential. So we really need to take care of that. And this again goes back to the heart of the strategy that we were saying. We need to segment our customers. We need to start building from inward out, and we need to realize that yes, there will be some customers, a significant number of customers, who would have challenged with digital literacy, who would not be comfortable using technology. But then there will be also a customer segment which are very frequent users of smartphones, apps, chat apps, have a Netflix account or view content on YouTube. So we need to be aware of that and build a, a process which we have tried to demonstrate over here through these personas, which caters to customers across the spectrum, the very digitally aware and digitally literate, to those who have an inherent fear and need to go through a process of adaptability to move to digital technology. Right. So we are at the end of our the content of our training session. I would just spend a couple of minutes and would invite Nitin also over here. Quick overview, as Nitin pointed out, this training is being conducted jointly by SPTF and MCRIL. MCRIL does a bunch of work in digital payments and digital finance. We do a digital finance diagnostic for MFIs where we assess the digital readiness and also help evolve a roadmap for digital transformation. These are some of the focus areas that we look at, as you see on your screen in this digital diagnostic, and the deliverables that come up from the digital diagnostic are detailed here. We examine the institution, we design a customized digital gains program. So the kind of processes and the walkthrough that we just talked about, how can it build for your institution? And then we build up a ground up or a inward out strategy of how do you effectively deploy a digital payment solution which your customers actually use and benefit from. So at this point of time, I would invite Nitin. Nitin, are you there? Nitin will share with you some information about SPTF's technical facility around providing assistance for such projects. Nitin, please go ahead.
Achin, before this, would you like to just take a few questions and answers? Just to let everybody know that there is funding available for the type of work that MCRIL is talking about. But prior to we get into maybe let's keep the funding towards the issue towards the end. Achin, would you like to do a few questions and answers before that?
Sure. Okay. So we'll take 3 or 4 questions, then we'll come to this. And then if we are left with more questions, we'll come back to it at the end. Right. At the end, we'll address more questions. So Sana, can you help us? I think you have been tracking the questions for us.
Yeah, so one question, although I think you touched upon it briefly during Persona 3, but maybe if you could elucidate a bit more on it. One of the common questions is, how do you make the digital payment successful with rural clients, rural farmers? How do you how do you increase the uptake? And the related part to this question is, how do you make digital payments successful with group lending models as well?
Okay, thanks. Before I answer that, please keep sending across your questions in the chat box and the Q&A function that you see. We will take them up. So yeah, we tried to address a little bit of this question in the Persona 3. Our take on this is customers who are in the rural areas. I take it to mean by saying rural, the questioner here means the customer segment which is not that digitally literate or has some access constraints in terms of access to a payment solution, in terms of access to mobile network, etc., etc. So I am assuming that is the kind of customer base we are talking about. In this case, as we said, it needs concerted effort of hand-holding and walking through the customer through the process of adopting digital. Just selecting a good technology, selecting a technology provider which has widespread agent networks or field staff or people on the ground will not work. This is a customer segment which is inherently a bit wary of going digital. The adaptability barrier for them is very high. So it needs to be broken down through a step-by-step process over a period of time. The second aspect, which also I think Sana emphasized and I will also re-emphasize again, is your staff plays a very critical role. Your staff knows these customers. They have been interacting with them for an extensive period of time. They know their concerns, their behavior, and they are the first point of contact for these customers. So no matter how much marketing spends or marketing materials and digital programs that you may run to reach out to these customers, the staff is the first line of A, enabling these customers, B, training these customers, C, pushing them or making them adaptable to use digital technology. So your staff and their training and their comfort with the whatever digital payment mode you may go for becomes extremely critical with these consumer segments. Sana, can we take up another question? Or Nitin, if you want to add anything over here?
No, I think it's fine. I think let's take a couple. We have very little time. Let's take a few more questions, and then I'll discuss the funding that is available.
Sure.
Sachin, this is a question I don't think we'll have a very clear answer for, but someone would like to know how much time does it typically take for institutionalization of digital transformation? And also sort of related to this is another question on, we talked about cross-functional team. So in your experience, to implement a successful digital strategy, what has been the ideal mix of in the teams that you have seen? If you could talk about that.
Yeah, I'll take the second part of the question first. Cross-functional team, field force I talked about. So you're right from a chief operations officer or your head of operations down to the regional manager. There has to be sufficient representation of your field force. Also, the joint team needs to have a mechanism to quickly capture the concerns that are relayed by the field and bring it up to the head office or the regional office level. So it's one part is creating this team. Second part is also having effective communication channels within this team. So field force, definitely your risk team, so that they are proactive in identifying the risks, both from the customer side as well as risks which are there for the institution themselves. Technology will play an underlying role always. And fourthly, I believe there has to be a senior management or board governed oversight, which looks at the rollout of this digital payments initiative or solution that you are going with. So it needs to define it as we talked about in our matrix. You need to define what you are going for. There needs to be a senior level representation from the senior management, or one of the director level persons can have a subcommittee which looks at the step-by-step implementation of this process. What are the concerns, what are the risks, what are the slippages in the targets that you defined at the start, and how they are being encountered. Also, a very key role over here is the committee, the joint mechanism or the internal mechanism would be within the MFI or the financial institutions. You also need to structure frequent and regular meetings with your financial service provider or the digital provider that you are going with. So while you may discuss and come up with various issues internally, there needs to be a defined and regular mechanism to flag this off to the partner whose technology or digital solution you may be using. And Sana, what was the first part? I'm sorry, I forgot that.
How much time would it take to institutionalize digital transformation? Of course, it will vary.
Oh, yeah, that's very, it depends on what level. Yeah, it depends on what level your institution is. If you look at our presentation very carefully, we are only talking today about digital payments. Digital transformation is then a very large exercise in which all processes, information flows, MIS, credit decisioning, multiple things are put on a digital loop. So digital transformation is an extensive process. The organization needs to define what it is aiming for and then go for it. But if you are starting right from the scratch, I would say to get up to a reasonable level to plan it out and implement it would take about 12 to 15 months. And that would be just getting to a reasonable minimal level, not a full-blown. Some institutions have been reforming, reorienting themselves towards going more and more digital for many years now, because technology evolves. So they keep on adding stuff, doing new things, and experimenting with new things. Yeah.
Okay, the
Sana,
last
any
one.
more?
Yeah, so I think
Let's take one more, and then Nitin can come in, and then because we are almost out of time, so those who
sure,
are
sure.
can stay back, we'll
So
extend the
we had
session
a
by
lot
about
of
10 minutes.
requests for examples of successful implementations of digital payment strategy, and I know that we were also trying to incorporate case studies in this, but due to the paucity of time, we couldn't do that. So one specific question is, if the MFI doesn't have adequate IT structures, how can it successfully implement a digital payment system by partnering with, say, a bank?
Yeah. So these days there are several. You don't only need to look at the digital payment. There are several SaaS models, so software as a service models, in which they provide software out of the box. So you may not have a very robust digital in-house core banking solution or loan management solution or some kind of a central digital solution. You can look at such technology providers who enable you to access to a middleware, a layer in between which you can use to talk to a, say, a mobile wallet solution or a lead generator or a digital onboarding solution. So I'm assuming that that's what the emphasis is over here. So I think I mentioned this also briefly, that and we are getting into slightly the area of digital transformation, but when looking at digital technology adoption, don't only look at just digital payments at the customer level. You need to build your own technology systems, and there are sufficient, even I would say pretty low cost solutions which provide this as a service. As I said, software as a service or SaaS solutions, which you can take out of the box, minimal customizations required or no customizations required at all, deploy it, and that solution enables you to speak to multiple digital payment providers. It may be wallets, it may be lead generators, it may be online KYC solutions, it may be POS deployers, it may be payment aggregators. And these software SaaS services are, as I said, low cost, easy to deploy, and quite quick to do. So it does not require an extensive time in deployment, in training, and they are meant to be for institutions which are just embarking on their digital journey, or do not want to spend a huge amount of time in acquiring a very expensive core banking solution or loan management solution. Yeah. So as I said, I will get back to more questions a little bit later. But Nitin, if you can come in over here and just explain
Sure.
what you were alluding to.
Sure. Thank you, Achin and Sana, for anchoring a lot of this and for developing the content. I think it's very, very interesting. And also thank you, everybody, for the questions. So just to quickly discuss with you the funding opportunities that are there. There are funds available globally for implementation, for strategy and implementation for a lot of the work that Achin and Sana have discussed. On your screen, what you see is a funding facility under SPTF that is exclusively for Southeast Asia. There are many people on this webinar who are from Cambodia, from Laos, from Myanmar, from Indonesia. And this is something that would be relevant for all of you. But I do understand that there are many of you who are also joining in from the rest of the world. And if you look at your chat box, I have put up links to funding that is available in Sub-Saharan Africa and the MENA region, funding that is available in Central America and also the Caribbean. And the last link is for the funding that is available for Southeast Asia. Sorry, could you go back to the previous slide?
Yeah, sorry.
Thank you. No, that's fine. Okay, so what sort of funding is available? It's available for trainings. Under trainings, there is responsible inclusive finance, which is SPM. There is client protection. There are training for tools such as the SPI4 tool, which looks at what is the level of SPM in your organization. And there is also training for technical assistance providers on client protection and on social performance management. In terms of co-financing, that is to say that the organization applying will have to share some of the financials of this, of any project that they wish to implement. You will see that there are a number of projects there in the green, the bottom part. One of them is the digital readiness assessment. I think Imkril had raised this in the last couple of slides about the digital readiness assessment work that they do. So that would come under the co-financing facility of the SPTF under RIFC and for some of the other regions of the world as well. Achin, next slide, please. Thank you. And also during the COVID, during this crisis, we understand that the turnaround time on funding has to be quick. We understand that amounts that may be needed may be large. So what RIFC has done is that we have modified our protocols a little bit. If you go on our web page, on the very top, you will find a simplified loan application form for funding. The funding review happens bi-weekly, so it doesn't happen. It used to happen quarterly, but now there's a quicker turnaround time given the situation that we are faced with, and we can go up to 80%. Unlike earlier, which was up to 50%, now the funding can go up to 80% or a maximum of $18,000 US, right? So again, I've put the links up on the chat box that is available there. And you know, if you have any further questions, please do reach out to us. Our email IDs are given in the webinar invite that you would have received. Anything else, Achin, to raise? You know, that you would like to raise from your side?
Not at this point. I
Okay.
believe you wanted Paul to come in for a bit.
Yes. So Paul, are you there?
Let me first allow him to talk.
Hi. So let me do a quick introduction. We'll take a quick 3-4 more minutes. Thank you everybody for waiting. Paul is with the UNCDF in Myanmar, and they're doing some interesting work on digital finance there. And Paul, may I ask you to take a quick 3 or 4 minutes to introduce the work that you're doing there?
Sure. Thanks, Nitin. Yeah, and thank you for this really excellent webinar. I think it's very, very helpful and really well done. Just a couple of comments. One, you know, the world is changing very quickly. Just in Myanmar, if we look back, phones were extremely expensive and very difficult to get. Now, a few years later, everyone has phones. So it's important to remember that for digital payments, we need to plan for where the clients will be in 3 to 5 years, not from where they are now. So this is very challenging to do. What will clients' preferences and needs be in the future? What role will MFIs and financial services play? And how can we look into the crystal ball to see what the future will look like? So these are difficult and challenging things, but in part to respond to this question, UNCDF and Modusbox are partnering together in Myanmar. We're building a shared payment infrastructure with MFIs to allow all channels and all products to be offered to share costs for common components like integration and reconciliation, and having common definitions of products across the industry. So in a sense, we're trying to build a future, and we do think this is what the future may look like for microfinance and for digital. And we have the first MFI integrated into a real-time payment system test done already. So we'll be doing a webinar about this and what the future of payments, MFIs, financial service providers may look like in the future. We hope you'll be able to join. Thank you.
Thank you, Paul, so much. Achin, any other points?
Thanks, Paul.
Will we close?
No, I think we are done.
Okay.
We have anyways overshot our time by about 7 or 8 minutes.
Yeah.
So just a few housekeeping announcements, administrative announcements again. This training presentation as well as the recording of this training today will be available on the SPTF website. in a couple of days. Once that is done, we will forward the link to all the attendees that have joined us today. Also, thanks for everyone for taking the time out. We have not managed to address all of the questions, but we have noted down. We'll try to also put up, when we upload the presentation and the training, we will try to put up some of the responses to the questions that you have made. So that should help address some of the queries that were raised. That's about it. Nitin, anything else?
No, thank you. Thank you everybody for your participation, and colleagues at MCRIL for the great work. I think this has been immensely useful, and I hope this has also been useful for all the participants on call. As Achin mentioned, that this will be available, the recording will be available on the SPTF website, and we will be sending out emails with links to that recording as well. Please do watch this space or the SPTF website for similar webinars, including country-specific ones in the future. We hope to have you on those calls as well. Have a good day, everyone, or a good evening, and we'll be in touch soon with all of you. Thank you.
Thanks everybody for joining. We'll just end the session now.